Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on Soundbites again. It's my absolute pleasure to be joined by double Paralympic champion Ben Watson and
Hi.
Ian Talbot, who is a prosthetist and orthotist at Pace Rehabilitation in Stockport. As regular viewers to Soundbites know, we'll have 15 minutes with Ben and Ian this afternoon. I'm sure we could speak for much longer, so I'm going to get started straight away. Ben, you were diagnosed with Guillain Barre syndrome in 2003 when you were 14 years old. Can you tell me how that affected you physically?
Yeah, so as a bit of background for people who might not be aware of Guillain Barre syndrome, effectively your immune system turns on your nervous system. It treats it as a threat effectively, and it starts to destroy the nerves from the extremities to your central nervous core. So from your fingers and your toes, basically to your spine effectively. So I don't know if you know, there's two basic types around your nerve. You've got the myelin sheath, which is sort of like the transmitting bit on the outside, for simple terms, and you've got the axon, which is the core. So Guillain-Barré syndrome itself is pretty rare, and the normal type just destroys the myelin sheath, whereas the type I had, which is slightly more rare, even more rare than a rare disease, attacks both and destroys both of them. So the recovery is quite slow. So I ended up, and it comes on pretty quickly. So I got ill just after Christmas in 2003. So it was 2003, 2004. I basically went from Boxing Day being fine running around to sort of New Year's Eve being paralysed in hospital.
Wow.
So yeah, the onset of the disease is actually really fast. So I ended up spending about 4 or 5 months in hospital and about 8, 9 months after that in a wheelchair. And then sort of the next 18 months after that with a bit of surgery and learning to walk again on crutches. And in terms of how it's left me, the easiest thing to see from now I'm sitting down is probably my left hand. It's here, it's fine, and my right hand is a little bit hyperextended, so it doesn't really have the base of the nerves haven't fully recovered, but it's mostly my legs that are most affected. So below my knees, I have no real sensation, circulation, or control, so I can't move my feet up or down, basically. So yeah, I basically walk with, I have what you class as drop foot, on like very severe drop foot on both feet.
Okay, and you were a keen sportsman, and you regularly played football, rugby, those kinds of things, but couldn't do that anymore and got into mountain biking. So tell me how you got into mountain biking.
I would say this is the time where I come out and say there's an absolute epiphany. It appeared out of the sky, in bathed in golden light. Unfortunately, not. A couple of my mates were quite into mountain biking, and he had a spare bike. I was like, well, I can't run anymore, so let's give it a go. So I ended up getting that. I'm lucky enough to be in the Peak District in the northwest. So great for mountain biking, and just took it from there. Really, I never really took it massively seriously. I just got into it, did a little bit of training at university, and raced a lot of mountain bikes at university, sort of like your normal short, what you call like short course, like XC, cross country stuff, to everything to like 12-hour and 24-hour racing. But just as a bit of fun. I didn't really do it with any real training behind me. I just rode my bike with my mates for fun. So yeah, and that continued all the way up through work. So I went to university. Qualified as a chartered surveyor, so I think probably a lot of your like litigation and your property teams will have dealt with chartered surveyors on either side. So for a company called JLL, I was an industrial agent, so you might know the Leeds guys. It's based in the head office. And then in 2016, I ended up doing a talent ID, and the story goes from there.
Yeah, and I remember reading an article with you where you said 5 years ago you were doing an office job and trying to squeeze your training in alongside your day job, and then you were fortunate enough to get lottery funding. What sort of difference did that make to you, to your training and you know, everything else really?
So absolutely massive. I suppose go back a couple of years. So as you rightly said, I was working as a surveyor. I qualified sort of 2-3 years post-qualified. It's a great job. I really enjoyed myself, really enjoyed the people I was working for. And then in 2016, one of my friends like, British Cycling are looking for some paracyclists. I watched it at the games. He was like, oh, and I wasn't 100% sure. He's like, just go along and see what happens. So from the power testing, a lot of you guys listen to it. Like, it's just on a stationary bike on a turbo on an erg. And you basically do power testing for 6 seconds, 3 minutes, and 12 minutes. And the numbers I put out came back quite well. But I think for me, the main thing is I can suffer really hard, and that's a really big thing to look for. That the numbers can be improved. Your ability to sit there and hurt yourself for no other reason that you just can is something that's quite valuable in the sport. So from that, I then got brought on to sort of the foundation program. Was taken to Belgium for World Cup in 2017 and started going quite well. I got 5th place and 6th place in the road race and time trial respectively. And then took self-funded myself to a World Cup in Emmen in Holland, and I got a bronze. And then that got me selected for Worlds, and I got a silver medal at Worlds. So that silver medal allowed me to get B podium funding. from the national lottery.
Yeah.
And then it came to exactly that point. Like, it's quite a big decision to give up your job. Like, obviously, I was getting paid well, my career was taking off, and I had this opportunity to go and be a full-time cyclist. And the guys that were really, really helpful, and they've said, you know what, take the chance. Like, these chances don't come across very often. You've got to take it. And if it goes badly, we'll give you a job back, or we'll do our best to give you a job back. And just even having that tiny little conversation with people, like, it just shows us the support networks you have with your mates and the people you work with, your friends. Like, yeah, I still go back to the office and have a good time with them, go and see them. That confidence allowed me to, basically give my job up. And then with the lottery funding, allowed me to still live my life and train full time.
Yeah.
And so training full time, not necessarily is a huge amount about training. Oddly, as professional athletes, we're paid to recover. So when I was training and working, I was probably working 45, 50 hours a week, commuting 10 hours a week, and then training sort of 10 to 12 hours a week around that. But you're not doing the stuff you need to do. You're not doing the recovery. You're not getting your feet up. You're not stretching. You're not doing the physio. You're not thinking about your eating. You're just rushing around like a maniac. So full time, you're probably only training 20 hours a week. And then the rest of it, you're doing all the stuff you should do. So you're stretching, your nutrition, you're seeing your physio, and just taking time and focusing on the recovery.
So it gave you that breathing space that you needed to focus on all those other bits.
Yeah, really. A huge amount more. And just you get so much more quality out of your training. Your training is always high quality. You just get much more bang for your buck almost. Sounds odd, but you've given up 60 hours worth of other things to get another 8 hours of training. But actually that 20 hours of total training is really high quality. It's you being professional as you would do in a professional job.
Yeah. And Ian, a question for you now. When did you start working with Ben? And Ben described a bit about his difficulties with his legs. And what benefits are you looking to bring to Ben with his orthoses?
So I've been working with Ben for about 3 years now. And as mentioned, functionally, Ben's condition mainly affects the muscles below his knees. So he doesn't have any problem generating good power to be able to cycle, because that mainly comes from your quads, glutes and hamstrings. His primary challenge is transferring that power to the pedal stroke, and that's where the AFOs help. So providing him with AFOs, we successfully increased the power output, but we also increased the level of stability around the pelvis, because when we assessed him, what we found was there was lots of side-to-side movement as well. So by anchoring him in his lower legs to the pedals, we also solved that problem as well.
Okay. And how much work did you do with Ben kind of tweaking his AFOs and getting all this right in the build up to the Paralympics? Or was it all first fitting, off you go, fantastic?
If only. That's a really good question. So it's been a 3-year process. When we work with any individual, we learn over time what works best for them. Toby's watching this, I've got to be careful. So I've lost count how many check socket and definitive AFOs we've actually made. But there's just so many variables you've got to take into account, because essentially we've got a rigid carbon device and we're trying to interface that with the human body, and the human body continuously is changing shape. And probably the best example of this with Ben was we made a pair of AFOs that Ben was really happy with. And he went off to training camp in Menorca, and now they were such a good fit that he messaged me to say, can't get them on. And what we completely overlooked was the fact that, when we go on holiday with the heat, we swell up. So he couldn't wear them. And now, so when he came back, and we knew that was a variable we needed to take into account for Tokyo, because it was going to be heat in Tokyo. So it's not an easy process to get an intimate fitting prosthetic or orthotic device, and especially when so much relies on it with the athletes.
I think if I add in here as well, Ian and the guys at Pace have been really, really good for me. Like that, Ian and the guys moved heaven and earth in the run to Tokyo. Obviously, it's postponed, all the issues around COVID, and yet we still managed to, in a 4-month period, to design some new AFOs, get them tested, and then bring them out using some new carbon pre-preg techniques, and even sort of think about how we fasten them at the front. So effectively, it's a splint sort of around the back of your leg. It goes in the shoe and bolts into the shoe, and then it's got basically a boa system, whereby you basically ratchet up the front, as Ian rightly said, like if we make the bow we can make the front piece longer. A, it's more aerodynamic, but B, it's more comfortable because you're spreading the force of the connections down your lower leg. So it's obviously innovating. And like as Ian said, like I think I've learned lots about this. In 3 years. I didn't. As Ian said, I only started wearing AFOs in sort of 2019. Sort of this very start of 2019. We looked at like 2018, start 2019 as a project. And it's quite hard. Ian and I were chatting this morning. We're like, have we got any power data? I was like, no, because we don't really know, but the power is a lot better. It's a lot smoother, and you're a lot more stable, and you can just get into a lot more aerodynamic position. Yeah, it's not as perfect as having a foot that would do this and a car and making a prosthetic calf. But we can't do that. We're not allowed, which I think Ian could probably happily go and do, but we're just not allowed to do that. So it's really interesting. I think going forward, Ian, sorry to jump in here, we've got a load more work looking at it. Like as Ian said, it's a continually evolving process. And for me, so I race on the time trial bike and the road bike, and your hip angle is very different in your position. So I think the next step going forward is almost having a time trial one and a road bike one. Sorry, I'm jumping in there.
No, it's fascinating. It's it's really interesting. I was wondering about whether you would have different AFOs for the different bikes, and so it sounds like something that might be looking at going forward. Ian, you've got some more work there already.
I think we're in the biomechanics lab at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, Chris.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
So Ben,
no rest for the wicked, unfortunately. Ian, sorry about that, mate.
we couldn't finish without speaking about your Paralympic success. So you won gold in the C3 men's time trial and the men's C1 to 3 road race.
Yeah.
Tell us about the experience of competing in Tokyo.
Surreal. Like obviously you set out on this journey to go and win. We wouldn't do a sport if you didn't aim to go and win. However, it's still really surreal. I didn't expect to win gold. I was hoping to win maybe a medal in the time trial, get a medal in the road race. Obviously, in behind it's like, I'd love to win both, but it's such a bit of a pipe dream. But it's just there's been a huge team behind me, which Ian, the guys pacing me in a huge part. Coaches, everybody else at British Cycling been massive as well. But the experience itself was amazing. Like the actual being part of that British Paralympic team is brilliant. Just it's the end of the focal point. Like you are very much on the knife edge in terms of kit, equipment, and how well you looked after. Like I can't think of anything. We had a feedback meeting, and the feedback was, I honestly can't really think of anything that could have been done any better. Even with COVID, so the COVID regulations have affected us. We knew that going in. People are saying, "Oh, there's no crowds." Well, fundamentally, unfortunately, with a lot of para sports, there isn't a huge amount of crowds. I think that's one thing we need to do better. In the UK, when this stuff actually it's quite good, we just need to be better at advertising it because people would come along, and that's a bugbear that I'm picking up elsewhere. However, there was probably quite a lot of people there. There's probably at the road circuit, because we were based off-site, there's probably 1,000, 1,500 volunteers and staff there from the Tokyo organising committee, probably 500, 600, 1,000 athletes and people like that. And then actually in the road race, we left the circuit, even though the weather was torrential, as you probably saw, the roads were absolutely lined by people watching the racing. So it was amazing. It was a really good experience. And honestly, coming into it, I was really, really nervous. So on the Sunday, so the time trial was on the Tuesday, 31st of August, and the road race on the 2nd of September. On the Sunday, I had a full day off, but I was really nervous. So everybody else in the team had medalled. I was like, I've been picked on. People have been left at home who probably could have medalled. So I had a chat with my psychologist. So that's been a really big part of my improvement over the last couple of years. And then on the Monday, we do an activation, a hot lap. The guys in the way of modelling that said, if you do a lap in 12 minutes, we think you're in a good shout for a medal. So actually that modelling was really, really good. The guy came second, did 35.59, so it's 3 laps. So being off by a second is quite a good modelling. And I went and did a hot lap in 11:31. So I knew I was going really well. Yeah. So everything came together in the holding camp, in the run up to the games, everything came together. And it's a surreal experience. It still hasn't really sunk in. And I think one thing we're probably quite bad at as humans and people who are high performers in their separate areas, but you're always looking forward to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. I think one thing I've tried to be really conscious of, especially in the last couple of months, is actually taking advantage of this and actually living in the moment and enjoying the fact that I am double Paralympic gold medalist. It still sounds really weird for me to say it. Like, I am the medalist, but there's only people behind me that have really helped and brought me on this journey. But actually getting enjoy that. Unfortunately, that enjoyment now has to stop. I have to get back into training because I've got a job to do. But yeah, actually still enjoying that and just chilling out and enjoying things. Really,
it's a phenomenal achievement, Ben. So congratulations. And I'm guessing you're already in the next cycle now, planning for the next Paralympics.
Yeah, sort of. Like, so we have like a full World Cup and World Champs series throughout the year. So that sort of runs for us like in the road, like May to September. Well, April to September, and the track runs October to the end of March. I don't compete on the track. We took the decision in 2019 just to go on the road and focus on the road, and obviously that's vindicated, paying off with 2 gold medals. Also, the guys on the track, Finn and Jacko. Finn's also supported by Pace. He got second in the pursuit, and Jacko got gold. And Finn got second in the road race. So yeah, we've got a pretty strong C3 men's team over at GB. And that's it. Yeah, we seem to find a form that works quite well. We're always tweaking at it, as with you do everything, and try to improve it and refine it. So yeah, we are looking forward to Paris, and there's a long road ahead, but that road will run out pretty quickly in terms of time, as it always does.
Well, once again, congratulations to you and the team behind you at Pace, and everyone that's put the effort in to get you to where you are. And as I said at the start, I'm sure we could have spoken for ages today. That 15 minutes has absolutely flown by. So thank you both very much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.